It sounds like the plot of a geopolitical thriller, or perhaps a script for a religious horror movie. A specific animal, bred in secret, transported across oceans under cover of darkness, intended to be slaughtered in an ancient ritual that hasn't been performed in 2,000 years. But this isn't fiction. This is happening right now. And the stakes couldn't be higher. We are talking about a single animal that holds the power to ignite a holy war, trigger the building of the Third Temple, and according to millions of believers, kickstart the end of the world. For nearly 2 millennia, a specific biblical prophecy has lain dormant. It is a ceremony so archaic, so mysterious, and so biologically difficult to achieve that for generations, it was considered impossible. A relic of history. But in our timeline, the impossible has shifted. The prophetic clock isn't just ticking, it is racing. Flawless red heifers, genetically perfect cows that meet the impossibly strict requirements of ancient Mosaic law, are currently on the ground in Israel. Preparations that the world thought were purely theoretical are becoming terrifyingly real. On July 1st, 2025, reports leaked from the Holy Land. Grainy videos and whispered confirmations suggested a momentous, world-altering event: the sacrifice of a red heifer. The reaction was instant. Some wept in joy, believing redemption was at hand. Others dismissed it as a dangerous stunt. But the fact remains. For the first time since the Roman legions burned Jerusalem to the ground, the ashes of a red heifer have arguably been produced. Today, we are going to tear apart the headlines. We are going back to the dusty scrolls of the Book of Numbers to decode the strict, bizarre laws of the red heifer. We will investigate the Texas ranchers and Israeli mystics who made this happen, and we will answer the terrifying question: is this the final countdown to the Messiah? To understand why a cow could possibly hold the keys to the future of the Middle East, you have to understand the sheer strangeness of the source code. We need to go back to the Sinai wilderness. This is where the operating system for the nation of Israel was written. In the 19th chapter of the Book of Numbers, God gives Moses and Aaron a statute that defies all human logic. It is the command of the para aduma, the red heifer. God demands a sacrifice, but not just any sacrifice. The specifications for this animal are like a biological riddle. First, it must be completely red, and when the ancient rabbis analyzed this text, they didn't mean mostly red or brownish red. They meant absolute perfection. If the animal has even 2 hairs, literally 2 single strands, that are black or white, it is disqualified. Useless. Imagine the level of scrutiny required to inspect an entire animal, hair by hair, searching for a microscopic flaw. Second, it must be without blemish. No scars, no birthmarks, no broken ears. It has to be the physical embodiment of wholeness. And third, it must have never been yoked. This cow cannot have worked a day in its life. It cannot have pulled a plow, carried a rider, or even had a jacket placed on its back. Its entire existence must be consecrated, set apart for this one singular moment of death. These 3 conditions combined make the red heifer a statistical anomaly, a biological unicorn. But the ritual itself, that is where it gets truly bizarre. Unlike every other sacrifice in the Jewish system, which happened inside the holy courts, this one had to happen outside the camp, in the wilderness. The animal was slaughtered, and its blood was sprinkled 7 times toward the temple. Then, the entire creature, hide, flesh, blood, and dung, was thrown onto a massive pyre. Into this fire, the priest cast 3 specific elements: cedar wood for strength, hyssop for purification, and scarlet wool to represent sin. The result was a pile of ashes. These ashes were the most valuable substance in the ancient world. They were mixed with living water from a spring to create the water of purification. Why? Because according to biblical law, the only thing that separates a human from God's holiness is death. If you touched a corpse, or were in a room with a corpse, you were ritually unclean. You were infected by mortality. The only antidote, the only way to reboot your spiritual status, was to be sprinkled with this water. And here is the paradox that has broken the brains of philosophers for centuries. The priest who performed this ritual became unclean. The man who burned the cow became unclean. The man who gathered the ashes became unclean. Yet the ashes themselves purified the defiled. It is a divine contradiction. The thing that cleanses the dirty, dirties the clean. It wasn't meant to be understood logically. It was meant to be obeyed. This wasn't just a ritual. It was a necessity. Without these ashes, the machinery of the temple stopped. Jewish history records a staggering statistic. From the time of Moses until the destruction of the Second Temple in 70 AD, a span of roughly 1,400 years, only 9 perfect red heifers were ever sacrificed. Just 9. Moses prepared the first. Ezra the scribe prepared the second. 7 more were offered during the Second Temple era. They even built a massive causeway, a bridge from the Temple Mount to the Mount of Olives, just so the priest could walk there without stepping on hidden graves. But in 70 AD, the Romans arrived. General Titus laid siege to Jerusalem. The temple burned. The priesthood was scattered. The lineage was broken. And the ashes lost to the wind. For 2,000 years, the command in Numbers 19 became a dead letter, a memory. But Orthodox Judaism has never forgotten. They believe the system is paused, not deleted. Prophecies in Ezekiel describe a third temple rising in Jerusalem. But there is a catch-22, a 2,000-year-old deadlock. You cannot build a holy temple on a site that has been covered in death and war for centuries without purifying the ground. You cannot have priests serve in that temple without purifying the priests. And you cannot purify the ground or the priests without the ashes of a red heifer. It is the ultimate bottleneck. No heifer, no ashes, no temple. The great sage Maimonides wrote a prophecy that haunts this discussion. He said the 10th red heifer would be prepared by the King Messiah himself. This brings us to the modern era. The deadlock is breaking, and the story of how we got here sounds like the setup for a spy novel. It involves a strange alliance between fundamentalist Christian ranchers in Texas and zealous rabbis in Jerusalem. For years, groups like the Temple Institute have been recreating the vessels, weaving the robes, and training the men. They have the blueprints. But they didn't have the cow. The genetics in the Middle East just didn't produce the right color. Enter the Americans. Christian ranchers, believing that the Third Temple is a necessary precursor to the return of Jesus, decided to help. One rancher, Byron Stinson, spearheaded the effort through an organization called Boneh Israel. They used modern breeding techniques to chase an ancient requirement. They scanned hides with magnifying glasses. And in 2021, they found them. 5 promising, rust-colored calves. But getting them to Israel was another hurdle. You can't just ship cattle internationally. The regulations are a nightmare. So they found a loophole, a legal backdoor. They didn't ship them as livestock. They shipped them as pets. In September 2022, 5 red heifers, designated as household pets, were airlifted to Tel Aviv. They were greeted like rock stars. There was dancing. There was weeping. The heifers were whisked away to a secret location in Shiloh to be raised in a sterile bubble. They had to reach their 3rd year without growing white hairs or getting sick. The tension was palpable. Even Hamas took notice. In a speech following the October 7th attacks, a Hamas spokesman explicitly mentioned the bringing of red cows as a major provocation. They understood the symbolism better than most Westerners. They knew that these cows signaled an intent to reclaim the Temple Mount. Then came the date, July 1st, 2025. Rumors swirled. Was it happening? The internet broke when photos surfaced of a fire on a hilltop. Byron Stinson, the Texas rancher, went on record. He announced that a sacrifice had been performed. He claimed it was done with a qualified priest and a kosher heifer. He claimed the ashes were now in Jewish hands. But this is where the narrative splinters. Immediately, the Jewish establishment hit the brakes. The Temple Institute released a statement distancing themselves from the event. They claimed the heifers had been disqualified. They called the July 1st event a practice run, a pedagogical experiment to train the priests, but not the actual prophetic fulfillment. The controversy centers on geography. The July 1st ceremony reportedly happened in Samaria, but biblical law and oral tradition insist the sacrifice must happen on the Mount of Olives, directly facing the Holy of Holies. If the angle is wrong, the ashes are invalid. So we have a split reality. One group claims the ashes are ready. The other claims we are still in the dress rehearsal phase. But step back for a second. Look at the bigger picture. Whether the July 1st ceremony was the real one or not is almost irrelevant. A psychological and spiritual line has been crossed. A red heifer was slaughtered and burned in Israel. The ritual has been resurrected from the history books. The practice proves the intent. The machinery of prophecy is turning. So what happens next? This is where the Christian and Jewish timelines collide in a fascinating way. For religious Jews, the 10th heifer is the key to the Messianic age. It allows them to purify the Temple Mount, currently occupied by the Dome of the Rock, and rebuild the house of God. It is a sign of ultimate hope. For Christians, the view is darker and more complex. They see the red heifer as a shadow of Jesus, sacrificed outside the camp, spotless, shedding red blood to purify from death. But they also view the rebuilding of the Third Temple with a sense of dread. Many evangelical Christians believe the Third Temple will be built, but it will be the stage for the Antichrist. They believe a man of lawlessness will enter this rebuilt temple and declare himself God, triggering the Great Tribulation. For them, the smoke of the red heifer isn't a sign of peace. It's the smoke signal for the apocalypse. It means the return of Jesus is imminent. We have traveled from the Sinai desert to the plains of Texas and back to the contested hills of the West Bank. We are witnessing a convergence of ancient text and modern geopolitics that is unprecedented. The red heifer is a paradox wrapped in a mystery. It creates purity and impurity. It unites Christians and Jews while simultaneously dividing them on the ultimate outcome. The questions hanging in the air are heavy. Was July 1st the trigger, or was it just a rehearsal for the main event? Are we watching the laying of the foundation stone for the Third Temple? One thing is undeniable. The story of the red heifer is no longer a myth. It is a reality. And for the first time in 2,000 years, the ashes are waiting. If you found this deep dive into the mechanics of prophecy as gripping as I did, you need to stay plugged in. This story is evolving by the week. Hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell. You do not want to be the last to know when the next domino falls. And I want to hear from you. Is the red heifer a sign of the end times, or is it a dangerous provocation in a volatile region? Let me know in the comments. I'll see you in the next one, where we will uncover the blueprints for the Third Temple itself. Stay vigilant.